Okay, let's get started. I think you and
Please.
I are probably both in the frequently mispronounced surnames club. So can you tell me
Yes.
what is the correct way to pronounce your last name?
I am Catelin Drey, and I am of the Northwest Iowa Dreys by marriage. So my husband's family is from Storm Lake. He actually grew up across the street from Art Cullen.
Mm.
So that's some of my, I'm not from Iowa, or I'm not of Iowa, but now I'm from Iowa, I like to say. And so that's my Iowa street cred is that my husband used to shovel snow and mow lawn for Art Cullen. And I think he babysat their kids a little bit too. So
Very
yeah,
good.
yeah,
So can you
yeah.
tell us, since my readers probably aren't too familiar with you, what brought you to Iowa and how, tell us a little bit about your journey into being politically active.
Yeah, so my husband and I met at Morningside University now, but I grew up and graduated high school in South Dakota. And a third of my class went to SDSU, a third of my class went to USD, and then a third of us were like, we got to get out of here. And
Mhm.
so I came to Sioux City and loved the community that was available on Morningside's campus at the time. And then after graduation, I taught for a year at a bilingual school in Honduras. I studied Spanish and photography at Morningside, so I can take your picture in two languages. Um, and after my year in Honduras, my husband had been hired by a local company here and had been promoted a couple of times. He had kind of settled in Sioux City, and we were just dating at the time. And so I was like, well, my parents explicitly told me that I was not allowed to move home, and that was in 2011. And so I've been here ever since. And I think I moved home one summer, maybe two. And so I've lived in Sioux City for the better part of the last 2 decades. And I really love the community that we have here. I'm so proud to live in Sioux City. I love the geographical location. I like to be outside adjacent, so you won't catch me camping, but you might catch me like spending some time at the Dorothy Pico Nature Center or out at Stone State Park because we just have such beautiful landscape here. But probably about in terms of my kind of activism, political involvement, about 2.5 years ago, I started a community online called Moms for Iowa, which is kind of a play on Moms for Liberty, but not the same at all, right? Um, and was encouraged by some other moms in other states to just be aware of and engaged in the policy that affects our everyday lives. And so I was I had been contacting my own representatives, calling on a daily or weekly basis, depending on what the topic was. And then I realized that if I could do it, then maybe I could help somebody else do it. And so I started sharing scripts and talking about the ways in which I was engaging with my representatives and kind of encouraging other people to do the same. And so from that, I became more involved in my local county party, Woodbury Democrats, and just, drinking from the fire hose because Iowa politics is a really rich environment, right? There's so much here to know, and the history of our state is really rich and beautiful. And so trying to get some of that historical context while also knowing that it's time for change. It's time for a generational shift in our leadership. And so the opportunity became available, and here we are. So I don't begrudge anyone for putting their name on a ballot. I have such deep respect for people that have served publicly. My condolences to the late Senator Rocky DeWitt's family. We did not agree on almost anything, if I had to guess.
Mhm.
But I just have such a deep respect for someone who has dedicated their life to public service.
Mhm.
And like I said, when the seat vacated, I felt called, and my husband and my almost 5-year-old daughter was as supportive as she could be, but my husband really has been such a fantastic cheerleader, and I very much have the legally blonde feeling of like what? Like it's hard? Like we're gonna figure it out, you know? I think that a fresh voice and a fresh perspective, what are young families experiencing in our state? How do we encourage our leadership to actually hear and heed the wishes of constituents as opposed to voting against the interests of our state. And I think we've seen that pretty consistently out of the Republican trifecta in the Capitol right now. And so, how do we shift that? How do we do better? How can we reach people who maybe have checked out because it is kind of ugly out there right now? But that's a long answer to a short question.
Well, Sioux City is really special to my family. You may not know, my grandmother her family emigrated from Russia, or what was then the
Okay.
Russian Empire, to Sioux City. So my grandmother grew up and her
Wow.
brothers grew up in Sioux City. My grandmother actually attended Morningside for a year, but in
Oh my
that time she
gosh.
went attended for a year and then got married. And at
Yeah.
that time, women kind of
Yep.
that was the
Yep.
end. But my great uncle did graduate from Morningside, and but
Oh
I
my
haven't had
gosh.
yeah, well, so when I was a kid, we used to go up to Sioux City a couple of times a year, but I haven't had any relatives living there for quite a while. So if you can describe a little bit from your perspective, what do you think are some of the most pressing issues affecting or problems affecting Sioux City, and what could the legislature be doing that they haven't been doing about that?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the number one issue in Sioux City right now is that we are a property tax poor district in terms of school funding. And so it takes, I think the last time I looked at this statistic, it takes like 2.5 homes in Sioux City to account for the school funding valuation of one home in all several other districts. I don't know exactly how many, but what that means is that our kids, we have the same number of kids that, I think we're the fourth largest district in the state, and we don't get the same level of property tax funding. And so that's the biggest thing we've seen, just the decimation of the SSA funding, and now with the restrictions and removal of AEA support, that becomes very cumbersome for a district like Sioux City. And I think that's the number one issue. And then we start to talk about, I know the governor was very passionate about, 4-year-old preschool, but what does that look like for childcare providers who rely on that headcount because infants are much more costly to care for and they require more attention. And so how do we make sure that all of our kids are getting access to a quality education? They're getting access to quality childcare. Their parents are able to hold a decent, well-paying job because they know that their children are being cared for by a qualified professional, whether that's at daycare or in a school setting. And so that's the number one issue for me. Thankfully, I have been very fortunate to have a wonderful daycare provider for my daughter.
Mhm.
But when we were ready to put her in daycare, she was almost a year because she was born in September of 2020. So she stayed home with us for almost a year. But even at almost a year old, a 1-year-old spot was really tough to come by. And I don't begrudge childcare providers either because I know that they deserve to have an appropriate head count in their classrooms or their homes, whatever kind of environment they're providing for kids. Um, and they deserve to be paid a livable wage and have, vacation and sick time and all of those things. And so um, being able to provide for our kids and families is just the number one issue for me right now. And then that goes into, affordable housing and clean drinking water. And when you start to peel back the layers of how we support young families, it's all this big spider web that once you start pulling on those threads, you realize how interconnected all of those issues are.
Have you already had a chance to get out and start knocking some doors or working
I
with?
am so anxious to get on the doors, Laura. You would not believe it. I haven't yet because we're still finalizing Doorlit. So I've been the candidate for since about 6:45 on Wednesday, and it's 3 o'clock on Friday,
Right.
so less than 48 hours. But it's been a really fantastic 48 hours. So haven't had the chance to start knocking doors yet, but I'm truly the most excited for that part of the
And
campaign, quite
you're
honestly.
you're a pretty experienced door knocker already, right?
I yes, I told so I at my day job, I am the designated office extrovert, and my husband knows this really well too. He's like, I can't take you anywhere because you don't shut up. Like, but I told my coworkers and I told my husband, I was like, I think I'm really gonna like campaigning. And they were all like,
Mhm.
you think? Right? Like this is what you were made for. It's just like talking to people, understanding what issues are important to them. How can I be helpful? Or how can I make some connections to, services or other people in the community that can be helpful to them? And so like I cannot wait. Like I'm just full body goosebumps even thinking about it. I'm so, so excited to start knocking doors.
And if other Democrats, I know we've had several special elections, and I know there were people who
So
came
it's the
in
year of
from
special
out of
elections.
town. Yeah, if
Yeah.
there were people who drove in from out of town. I mean, if somebody wants to help your campaign, what would be the best way for them to get involved right now?
Yeah, so thankfully, I have some really great support from across the state, people who, like Senator Mike Zimmer, who have recently run in special elections and know the ground game is paramount. And so they're starting to organize canvassing and carpools to Senate District 1 because we are kind of tucked up here
Yeah.
away from some of those other big metro areas, right? But we're all hands on deck. So folks that might be interested in phone banking from home or potentially writing postcards. I know that some people get really excited about writing a postcard. I won't begrudge them for that, but phone calls and door knocking are going to be our biggest targets right now. And so they can visit dreyforiowa.com. There's a volunteer sign up form right on the homepage and let us know how you want to be helpful. We're all hands on deck. So anybody that's willing to dial, we're happy to send them the virtual phone bank information.
A few years ago, I spent some time around the Urbandale Democrats. They have this really successful
Oh
neighborhood
man,
voter
they do.
program. And
Yes.
I think like one of the keys of it is that there's a place for everybody because not everyone wants to go out and knock on a stranger's
Hmm.
door or make a phone call, but maybe they'll
Yep.
stuff lit into bags. Maybe they'll help get refreshments ready for the people.
Drivers
Get
are
yeah, that's right. Drivers
huge.
for the people knocking on doors. So
Yeah,
there's all kinds of ways that people can participate that I think we
truly.
don't think about. So,
Yeah, I knocked I was really disappointed that I didn't get to 1,000 doors last fall. I think my final total was 977 voter contacts as a volunteer, and I was, like I said, really disappointed I didn't get that 1,000. So I think I'm going to hit it
you'll hit
in
it.
a matter of
I
I'll get
bet.
there this time. But I did most of those packets. That's the you get handed a packet and say, here's your addresses and go. But I did most of those packets without a driver.
Mhm.
And the couple of times that I had a driver were towards the end of the cycle. And I was like, is this how fast everybody else has been working? So
Yeah.
having somebody who's looking at the map and saying, okay, go here, 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 I'll meet you on the next corner. If you're not the designated extrovert, that driver and geography skills are so, so welcome. And you get to you sit in the air conditioned car, you got a little snack, you can listen
Yeah.
to the radio, find a podcast.
Mhm.
That's so, so welcome. So if you're willing to drive a door knocker, it makes a huge, huge difference.
I need to ask about an issue. My grandmother was active in the Sioux City Maternal Women's Health League in the
Oh,
1940s,
mhm,
which later became one of the founding organizations of Planned Parenthood of Greater Iowa in the 50s. So I like to say
mhm.
I'm a third generation Planned Parenthood supporter in Iowa.
Wow.
Just need to ask because Planned Parenthood, Sioux City lost the clinic, then they reopened a clinic, and then
And
we
then
recently learned
mhm.
that we're losing the clinic again. So, can you talk a little bit about reproductive rights or how important an issue is that to you, or does it play into your campaign at all?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely it does. And I think any Iowa woman will tell you that the reproductive care that we need is not always available. We are 51st in the nation for maternal health care providers per capita, so literally cannot get worse.
Mhm.
And Planned Parenthood is an integral part of reproductive health care. And um, I think, Governor Walz said it best when he said, mind your own damn business. Like what happens between a patient and their doctor is none of my business as a private citizen. It's none of the government's business trying to interfere with those decisions that should be made between a patient and their family and their doctor. And that's a full stop.
Is there anything I didn't ask you that you think would be important for my readers to know, either about you or your campaign?
No, I mean, I'm here for a follow-up if you have more questions. Like I said, I feel like it's been less than 48 hours. I'm so honored, just by the level of support that we've gotten up to this point. I also want to mention that the two gentlemen that were up for consideration at the special nominating convention, I'm just so honored to have been in that room with them. It was a really electric room. We had almost 70 folks in attendance, which, for a special nominating convention in the middle of the summer when everybody's on vacation and at the lakes and the week after a holiday week is really, really impressive. And so I think, what that tells me is that one, people are motivated, and two, people are paying attention, and they have not been getting a fair deal out of, I'm calling it the double Republican trifecta, right, at the federal level and at the state level. And I think that means that people are ready for something new, a fresh perspective, somebody of a different generation, maybe. Politics is likely the last place I'll be considered young, so I'm clinging to that moniker a little bit. But no,
In the Iowa
I
Senate, you definitely would be on the
I'm
younger
going to bring down
side.
the average. I know. I think Senator Matt Blake is probably the next closest in the caucus to age and other demographic factors. We're both young parents, and so he's already offered some really spectacular advice, which I'm so grateful for. But yeah, and I think I've never been more hopeful about the state, and I don't think that there's another option, right? Like we have to maintain this level of optimism, or kind of what's the point? And so I'm honored and optimistic, and like I said, I'm really excited to start knocking doors as soon as that lit's done. So
Right. Well, good luck. Thanks so much for taking the time.
thank you. It's my pleasure.
Right.